Hello, this is Malorian, and this is the Orc Tactical Team, and what we're going to be talking about today is Spider Riders. So, Spider Riders, pretty cool stuff, you know, who doesn't like a bunch of spiders running around. So that's a great thing going for them, they look good, and as well, because they were part of the starter set, a lot of people have tons of these guys. I know personally, I probably have around, I don't know, probably 30 of these things. But the real problem is what do you do with all these things? You know, what's the best way you can be using these guys? Because if you're going to have a bunch of these great looking models going around, you might as well do something with them, right? So let's start with some of the easiest things you can do with them. To begin with, they haven't really changed a lot from their roles in 8th. They're still great for running out there, for rushing war machines. You know, now with the fast cav vanguard movement, you can kind of get a little bit of a jump on it. You know, less of them can attack the war machine, but at least if you're tying this war machine up, then it's not shooting at you, and that's really the main thing. You can be using them like you did in 7th, where you're trying to do some baits and things. Now, of course, in 8th, where they can redirect, it's not exactly the same, but you can always do the thing too, where if they have a block here and you're trying to stop them from charging this unit here, you just sit your spiders just like this. That means that they can't charge the unit that they want to charge, and if they go after the spiders, they just hold the charge, and sure, they'll beat them and be able to reform, but the idea is that on your following turn you've now charged and you're out of the way, so they can't catch you. So that's one way you can be using them, but that's almost not enough. You know, people, that's like a unit of 5 in your whole army, and that's just doesn't seem to be quite just enough for all these models are going to be having. Well, one thing you could be doing is if you get your hands on some bows and arrows, you can try and do the kind of all-mounted list, right? You can do pretty much an all-spider list. Just have tons of these guys, give them short bows, and you can even run it like a wood elf list, just running around, shoot, 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 and do the whole you can't catch me while I shoot you up game. The problem with that, though, is that if you want to do that, play wood elves. These guys have a crappier bliss skill. They take minuses while moving around, and whereas a lot of times I give my wolves bows just because, you know, why not? For 5 points, I'll probably make those points back eventually by just shooting one guy. I wouldn't bother doing the converting here for that. You know, if you have the models that don't even have it, don't even bother. Just keep their points cost low and keep it as a throwaway unit. So that's a little bit depressing. So, you know, it's something that you could do as a theme army, but it's not going to work that well. You could always try and make them into a combat block, and of course when you get them in the starter set, they come in a unit of 10 with full command, so people go off with that. But the problem with this being is that they're a pretty crummy combat block, and of course, like all cavalry, you're not going to be taking away steadfast. You're just going to be beaten up because they're fairly weak cavalry, and then they just kind of die. One thing that they do actually excel at is because these poisons I got ahead of myself. Because these spiders have poison, they're actually fairly good at taking out monsters. So if you were to have a good sized unit of, say, 15 or something to make sure they're not going to run away, you could be using them to be running after giants or gorgons or some sort of big monster like that. Something with high toughness but no armor. These guys are pretty good against. But then again, that's also very limited because the second rank, the mount doesn't attack. So even then, it's not really looking all that great. It's something that they can do, and it's going to be less points of these guys that's going to be killing a giant. However, in the end, it's still kind of a gamble, and why even bother? They'll probably be, if you don't babysit them with your general and BSB, they're probably failing their fear test anyway, and then you won't be doing much at all. So, okay, so that's kind of out. So what is there out there that these guys can really do very well? Well, another thing that they can do very well is get in the way of things. Speed bumps, that's another thing from before. But again, damn, if you want a speed bump, go for a 40-point troll. Don't go for the 76-point unit of these guys. Now, if you really wanted to use a lot of these guys and have them being very effective, this is the only way I see it. Taking a bunch of these guys, and by a bunch I mean something like 20, 25, maybe even more. And what you're going to attach to this is mounted characters. And we're talking here about orcs on boars. And the nice thing about this, I mean, you might think that, oh, that's wrong, I'm putting orcs in a goblin unit. Well, whatever, that's the way the game works. And because they're both cavalry, first of all, they're giving the characters, look out, sir, they're giving them relatively cheap ranks. Because, of course, if you were to put them in ranks of boar boys, they're double the points of these things, so you're kind of saving points there. They're just as fast. You know, these are movement 7, boars are movement 7. You're not losing anything there, as opposed to if you're putting them into a unit of wolves. You know, you still have the poison here, which is nice. And the main thing is that when you get into combat, it's going to be fast. You know, you got this fast unit that's going to get into combat quick, and then you have this orc that's really putting in all the kills, while these guys give a few extra kills, but the main thing they're giving the ranks and taking away steadfast. And so I can see these as a fast blitz unit. And that could actually work fairly well. Hell, you could even go and push this further and make it so your entire front rank is all orc characters on boars, and then behind them is just a bunch of these guys giving ranks. Now, of course, you'll have to make sure that you protect them from shooting and things, because if a little, you know, let's say they get hit by a mortar, bam, all of a sudden tons of them are done. So, you know, obviously this is a tactic with risks, but it's actually something I could see them being useful for. And another nice thing about having these instead of the big unit of boar boys following them around is you could feel a lot safer running over things. Because, for example, if you're going to be running over a wall to get to a charge with your unit of boar boys, well, then all of a sudden all of them on a 1 is taking a wound and dying. These guys ignore it. Your orc on the boar, he'll still have to take a test, but the main thing is that your 25 whatever guys following behind will not have to take a test. So that's something to keep in mind. So really, spiders in 8th, in general, if you want to be going for the very best use, keep it simple. Shoot them out to go and just tie up war machines. Actually, while we say that, you're probably better off going still with the wolves, because they are just that much faster. But hey, you know, if you got these guys and you love them, you know, the 2-inch difference doesn't always come into play, so why not? Their poison attacks can be great, and shooting can be interesting when you're going around shooting, but it's not the best thing to do. And so if you really want to take out a big block of these guys and make them somewhat effective, take a big block of them and then put a big orc boss in the front. So there you have it. That's the way that I'd use these spiders in 8th. And what we're going to be talking about next time is going back to orcs versus tournament lists, and this time we're going to be taking on tournament vampire counts. So see you then. Bye.